Welcome to the 43rd edition of our most popular series, Cool Tools. This is where I share some of the best, most innovative, and downright useful tools that I have ever used in all of my years as a full-time woodworker. This time, I picked 7 head-smacking tools. You know, when you see something that is such a good idea, you kind of smack yourself in the forehead and say, why didn't I think of that? Many of these have special features that aren't obvious at first, but they end up making such a huge difference. Below this video, I'll put links to everything, either in the video description or you can find them pinned to the top of the comment section. Use those links to check things like current prices and to see more details about features that sound especially good to you. And let me just say one more thing before we start. Everything I'm going to show you is cool. You're going to agree with that. But the last tool in this video is an honest-to-goodness game changer for the table saw. I'm serious. You haven't seen anything like this before. So stick around for the whole thing. It will absolutely be worth it. Now let's get started. Have you ever wanted to own one of those fancy high-end boutique tools that you see online with the exotic wood handles and all those brass accents? You could pay loads of cash for one, or you could just make it yourself. All of these tools here were handmade from inexpensive kits. They are stunningly beautiful and the quality is exceptional. Plus, they make great afternoon projects and wonderful gifts. Taylor Tools will supply you with the metal parts. You provide the wood. Usually it's just a small piece from your scrap bin. Take this awl, for example. The kit was like $5, and that's premium CRV steel with a Rockwell hardness of 61. These tools are things you can be proud of. The knives and gauges are sharp, they're comfortable, they're designed to not just look good, but to be a real pleasure to use. One of my favorites is the 18th century style winding sticks for detecting warps in boards or bench tops. The bevel gauges are blued steel with brass fittings that are polished and ready to use. These are heirloom quality tools. I've made some of these kits in the past in videos, and I'll be making some more and showing you them in the future. I really enjoy these things, and I get a lot of pride when I use a tool that I make myself. Plus, the designer of the kits is a friend of mine who runs a small family business in Missouri that is definitely worth supporting. I'll link to them below this video. Just pick 1 or 2 toolkits and try them out. I think you'll find a new hobby. Nut drivers are simple tools, but I usually hate them. The problem is, most allow the end of the bolt to bottom out in the head of the nut driver, so you can't thread a nut onto anything longer than about 3/4 of an inch. It's stupid. But Klein Tools solved that problem in such a smart way that I tossed my old set and bought a set of these. The shaft of the tool is hollow. That gives the end of the bolt somewhere to go as you thread the nut on. Genius. Granted, it's pretty rare that I would thread a nut on this far, but even just an extra inch or so will give me room that will make a big difference. The magnet inside the head holds the nut securely so you don't have to get it started with your fingers. The steel shaft is heavy and rugged, and I love that they're colored, so I can quickly spot the 1 or 2 sizes that I use the most. The hex shafts will work in a power drill or in the included handle, which has a quick release locking mechanism, and maybe best of all, it ratchets. Why don't all nut drivers ratchet? Honestly, this is a great example of how a simple tool can be made so much better with a little innovation. I'm going to link to these below, and I suggest you grab a set now because I don't know how many they have. And when I talk about truly great ideas like this on Cool Tools, they disappear and then viewers get mad at me. So fair warning about this one and about the next one for that matter. While we're talking about great ideas and hand tools, here's another one that I discovered some time back. It's a clever little screwdriver set from a German company called Wera. At first it looks pretty normal, right? It utilizes those common 1/4-inch bits, but there are a couple of hidden features that you have to see. First, there's a button on the end of the handle that opens up the internal bit storage area. No more lost bits. Keeping everything in the handle just makes so much sense. Now check this out. A switch on the top of the handle transforms it from a short, compact screwdriver to a full-length screwdriver. I love that. I also love how the shaft will come fully out and then you can use it in a power drill as well. And everything goes in a handy little included pouch. I have one of these things in my drawer in my office. I have one in a drawer in the kitchen, and I'm going to get one for the car too. It's another smart, high quality tool that I'm pretty excited about. Check it out at the link below before these are gone too. You know those analog thickness gauges on planers? They're a joke. They're unusable. This is why I usually just use a caliper and I ignore the machine's gauge entirely. But imagine the possibilities that could come with an accurate planer gauge, like the EasyView digital readout from iGaging. No more fiddling around trying to get the planer rollers to engage without taking too much off on your initial pass. No more guessing how much a quarter turn or a half turn on the wheel is going to remove. No more overshooting and getting a workpiece that's too thin. If I have a specific thickness in mind, maybe I want to make one board match the thickness of another, I can measure it with the caliper and then plane right to that measurement. If I change the planer setting for another task, then I discover I need to go back to where I was before, I can dial that right back in. I can even record these settings to use later. It was easy to install. It comes in versions for large stationary machines like mine or the compact benchtop machines. I found it to be quite accurate with metric, decimal, and fractional scales. And it maintains its readings even if you adjust the machine with the DRO turned off. This is an inexpensive way to really increase your planer's abilities. Honestly, I could not be happier with this thing. I wish I had upgraded to this years ago. I highly recommend that you grab one at the link below this video. I am a big fan of Duragrit sanding blocks. I've used them for, I don't even know how many years, a long time. And I don't think I've worn one of these out yet. I'm pretty sure I still have the very first one I got at Woodcraft kicking around the shop here somewhere. That's because they're covered with carbide grit, not the loosely attached silicon carbide dust you get on regular sandpaper. These are coated with durable, tool-grade carbide that stays put. It's going to last hundreds of times longer than typical sandpaper. They come in 4 grits, from 60 up to 150, so I don't use these for fine finishing. I use them for shaping and trimming and rough smoothing. In fact, they're ideal for joinery tasks because the side of the block is 90 degrees to the sanding surface. So that lets you get into corners. It lets you square up things like tenons. I've even used them on a shooting board for miters or for custom fitting parts like a hand plane. These are honestly among my favorite hand tools ever, and that's saying something. But it mostly says that you should get 1 or 2 for yourself. If you're just gonna get a couple, I recommend the 80 and the 120. If you're only gonna get one, the 120. Those are the grits that I use the most. Of course, if you're like me, you're going to end up getting all the grits eventually, but there's nothing wrong with starting small and seeing if you agree that these are truly cool tools. Use the link below to find out more. Sawsta may be best known for their table saws and their hot dogs, but they also make a handful of other products. And when they do, they're almost always unique. That's why I wanted to try out their brand new Revolution miter gauge. And I'm not disappointed at all. This thing works differently than any other miter gauge I've used. Let me get right to the feature that really stood out to me. It's the gear-like teeth along the edge of the compass head. Now at first I thought these were just the same indents that you see on Inker gauges, but then I turned that great big knob and I discovered that this is actually a system of interlocking gears. And what makes this really cool is that you can change the resolution with a little switch. So you can move it freely if you want to conform it to some odd angle, or you can switch to 1 degree increments if you want to set to a specific hole angle. There are even settings for 1/2 degree increments, 1/4 degree, and even an ultra-fine 1/10 of a degree increment for fine-tuning your cuts. Imagine you cut a miter on a piece of molding and it doesn't quite fit tightly. You could make the tiniest correction with this. It's essentially a micro adjuster at a vernier scale level. Now, I can talk all day about whether or not these little gear-like indents are reliable, but instead I'm going to do something that seems truly innovative. I'm just going to make some cuts and see what happens. First, here's one at 90 degrees. And my Starrett compass confirms that the result is exactly 90 degrees. Now I'll loosen the head and I'll move it around a bit so we can see if it's going to come back to 90 degrees again. This wasn't a given because it did seem like there was a little looseness in the indents, or at least in the knob. But again, let's make the cuts and see. And sure enough, in actual use, I found that it did return right back to 90 degrees. Who knew that on miter gauges, the key is tightening down that knob? What about other angles? Here's 45. Again, I only use the gear indent system to get to this location, so let's see if that's accurate. The lines on the compass are positioned every 2 degrees, so the 45-degree point is going to be between 2 lines as indicated by that tiny circle, and it looks dead on to me. But the best way to check a miter cut is to cut 2 of them so you can double any potential error, which makes it easier to detect a flaw when 2 halves are assembled. So I put them together, and these 2 45s come out to exactly 90 degrees. So I'm satisfied that this is an accurate miter gauge. And I do really like that gear system. It's nice and smooth, and I think it's really clever. There are several other clever features too, like the linkage on the flip stop that instantly adjusts to various sacrificial fence thicknesses, which solves a big problem a lot of gauges has. The extension adds 37.5 inches of repeatable crosscut capacity, and you can add multiple positive stops along the fence that gives you the ability to make repeated crosscuts of various lengths with the stop. There are a few minor annoyances, like the stop box micro adjuster and the cam lock on both the stop and the fence extension, which are a bit fiddly. But overall, I think SawStop has made a worthy entry into what is becoming a crowded market for premium miter gauges. I'll put a link below if you want to check it out. Several years ago, I started using rotor bits with Astra protective coating. Even if you remember, about 3 years ago, I did a segment on cool tools about the benefits of this type of coating. And over the years, I've become a believer in how Astra coating can make bits just last longer. So I was excited to learn that there is a new version called AstraHP coating. Now, this isn't available on every bit yet, but if you're planning to buy any new bits at all, I suggest you at least check BitsBits.com, maybe favorite them or save a link. Check them first to see if that bit is available with the new coating. It's not just about looking cool, although that does look pretty cool. AstraHP is a microscopically thin, ultra-hard coating that's added to premium white-side bits to reduce friction and heat buildup and the resulting premature wear that is caused by that. This leads to longer bit life overall, but where it really stands out to me is how it affects the performance drop-off that comes after a typical bit is used a few times and becomes less than factory sharp. It does add a fair amount to the cost of the bit, but this is not something that you're going to get for every bit in your rack. I like it on my most used bits, like flush trim bits and pattern bits or bits that I use in my CNC. Anything that you're going to use for small-scale production work or large-scale production work, or if you have a big furniture project and some tough wood like hickory, or any bit that you just find yourself reaching for regularly. So here's what I recommend. Use the link below this video to get maybe just one straight spiral bit with the new AstraHP coating. The spiral bits are the workhorses in most shops. Get whichever style you're going to use the most, flush trim, compression, pattern cutting, whatever. Maybe just invest in one and try it for yourself. Then you can decide if it's worth adding more of these to your collection. I know I will be. All right, I think you're going to agree that I saved the best for last. This honestly is by far the best table saw fence I have ever used. And believe me, I have tried every type of fence over the years. Now that's a big statement, but I'm going to back this up. The BigEye fence is unlike anything else on the market. Look how smoothly this thing operates. I can move it with one finger, and it stays parallel to the blade the whole time. That means you can line up a cut with your pencil line, and the fence isn't going to shift when you lock that handle down as pretty much every other fence does. This is possible because it runs on a unique linear guide system with 8 precision rollers on hardened steel rods. This makes the glide exceptionally smooth and accurate. Now, this isn't just a superficial feature for people who like smooth tools. It makes adjustments more accurate. There's no more, for example, tapping on the end of the fence to nudge it over a bit at a time. When you've got something this smooth, like the BigEye fence, you can use a micro adjuster wheel for dialing in the perfect cut. Another game-changing feature is the fence locking system. First, the handle is up on top where it should be instead of on the end where it can catch you in the trunnions when you walk by. And when you engage it, the fence locks on both ends. That eliminates deflection on the outfeed side, and it makes it possible to use things like those hold-down guide rollers or feather boards to hold your work down on the table without lifting up on the fence. I also love that aluminum fence extrusion. It can be turned upward to support panels on edge for resawing, It can be turned down to give you extra room for pushers when you're running up close to the blade guard. In fact, that ability alone, being able to get the fence right up close to the blade without removing the blade guard, will add a tremendous amount of safety to your saw. But you can also adjust the length of the fence in relation to the blade for extra kickback protection when you're working with problem materials like construction lumber. Many of our European viewers swear by these short rip fence setups. The extrusion also makes an ideal length reference for repeated crosscuts. There are loads of other cool features on this, like flip stops for repetitive ripping tasks. How great is that? And it's got this crystal glass cursor that reduces parallax errors when you're reading measurements if you're not looking at it directly over. Okay, this is definitely a game-changing fence, I think you'll agree, but will it fit your saw? Yes, because it also uses this ingenious T-track style mounting system that will work with any hole pattern. Honestly, every fence should have that type of mounting system. It would fit nicely on contractor saws or pretty much any cabinet saw. I don't care what the brand is, it's probably going to fit. There are a lot more fine details that I just don't have time to go over here. So I highly recommend that you just visit the website at the link below and explore this thing for yourself, even if you just want to drool over it a little bit. It is a substantial upgrade, and the quality is fantastic. Like I said, the BigEye Rip fence is definitely the best I have ever used. In fact, I'm going to be getting a second one for my other table saw because I don't want to use my old fence anymore. We'll have another cool tools in a couple of months, but before we go, here's another discount opportunity on one of the most popular tools that I've ever had on this show. And I hope that you'll just watch this little clip and then visit their website and thank them for supporting this important series, because we wouldn't have been able to make it to 43 of these without companies like them. It's just a couple of cuts. Your ears will be fine, right? They will be if you have your ISOtunes Bluetooth earbuds in, because you'd already have your ANSI certified hearing protection on because you're listening to your favorite music and podcasts. And you're supporting a small family business at the same time. Please use the link below this video to learn more and to show them you support what we do as well.